All right, so in this video, we are going to begin our next topic in our survey of mathematical fields, and it is the field of finance. So obviously, finance has a lot of application, math-based application, and so we are going to look at some of those in the next couple of weeks. So this week we will begin with 11.1, and 11.1 is just simple interest. So simple interest is not used that often in practice, but it is a good foundational place to start because all of the other more complicated ways that interest is calculated in our world, be it car loans or house loans or any annuities, things like that, it still has the foundational formula that you use for simple interest. We just kind of add to it. So we're going to spend this week just looking at simple interest, kind of getting some basics down. And then in the next weeks, we will look at some different applications of interest in finance. So simple interest is you have some basic terms that you need to use. We talk about principal. So principal is either the initial amount that you invest if you're going to be earning interest on your money, or it's the initial amount that you borrow that you're going to be paying interest on. So when you hear the word principal, if you're not familiar with it, that's what that means. Then we talk about interest. Interest is the amount of interest that you either owe or that you will be earning. And then rate is the actual interest rate, right? So don't get interest and rate confused. Rate is the percentage. Interest is the amount of money that percentage gives you or that you will be paying. And then time, of course, is the length of time that you're investing the money or the length of time that you are borrowing the money. So probably the biggest mistake that students make, or the thing that's easy to overlook, is that your interest rate that is given and your time that is given have to match. So if you are given an annual interest rate, which is the most common, and it is actually what you will assume the interest rate to be unless it explicitly states differently. So if you're just told interest rate is 4%, then you assume that's annual. But if the interest rate is given annually, then your T in your formula, your time, also must be given in terms of years. So for example, if your interest rate is an annual 4% rate, and you're going to invest your money for 1 year and 6 months, right? 6 months is half of a year. Then your T, your time, is 1.5, okay? If your interest rate is given in months, say you have a monthly interest rate, then your time also must be in months. So if your monthly interest rate is 2%, and you're going to, again, invest it for 1.5 years, your interest rate is 2%, 0.02. Don't forget to change your rate to a decimal, right? It'll be given as 2%. That is a decimal, is 0.02. You move the decimal 2 places. So if your rate's given as a monthly rate, then your time also must be given in months. So 1.5 years would be 12 months plus 6 more months. So T would actually be 18 if you are dealing with monthly. So you just have to make sure that your time and your rate are given in the same increments. Otherwise, your interest will be way off. Okay. So once we know how to calculate interest, once you kind of play around with that interest formula, it's a pretty simple formula. Then we can kind of start talking about calculating future value or maturity. Those mean the same thing. So maturity or future value just means at the end of the given time, at the end of however long the loan is or however long the investment is, how much money is there going to be? How much money am I going to have, or how much money am I going to owe? So that is very simply the principal plus the interest. Now that calculating that interest can get more and more complicated depending on how the organization calculates it. But again, this time we're just going to be looking at simple interest. So you have a lot of problems that give you different pieces of the information. Maybe you know in 10 years, I want to have X amount of money. What interest rate do I need to have to accomplish that? And so the formulas in your textbook are going to help you walk through that. So you'll learn to calculate the interest, then you'll learn to calculate the future value or the maturity value given a specific amount of money with a specific amount of interest over a specific amount of time. But then once you're comfortable with that, you can actually flip it and you can say, okay, well, I want this much money and I have this interest rate, so how long do I need to invest it? Or I don't want to pay any more than this in this many years, so what kind of interest rate would that involve? So that's kind of what this section is looking at. I think that the formulas are pretty simple. They don't get too complicated. So hopefully you can remember some of your basic algebra skills. But if you need to review anything, let me know and I can help you out with that. And then next week, we'll kind of build on the simple interest and we'll look at compound interest, which is more common. And then we'll look at how that applies with like credit cards and other types of loans and how they calculate interest on those things.